cranes in gear, enjoy the day, and look after yourself. Have some water. You may end up with a headache.
Thanks, Steve.
Thank you, David.
By the way, Stephen is my lead out here when I'm not here. He can syntax and write as good as I can. And the seminar doesn't stop when you leave here. You guys all know how to operate computers. You get home, you can Skype me, you can send me emails, ask me anything you want for as long as you study this stuff. I mean, I've got students that have been with me 15 years. And we talk on a regular basis. And I answer everybody's questions. And I don't care how many questions you want to ask me. So we go through 3 stages in life. Your first stage is you do not know what you do not know. No one was aware of syntax until you saw this program. Once you saw it, you were aware of what you did not know, which means you didn't know about the math interface on language. For that fact, for 8,500 years, the entire population of the planet Earth in 5,000 languages did not know about the math interface on syntax until 1988 when I broke the code. And then when you know what you know, you become a teacher and stand up here like I do and educate people. And Stephen is in that location now where he can stand up here for 20 hours and put on a 20-hour seminar also. And then there's a lot of things that he knows the right things to say, but he hasn't had the 74,000 hours of knowing what the wrong things are to avoid. And it's like you've got 100 landmines on the floor here, and you got to go from that wall to that wall. How many of them do you get to step on before you get to that wall? In other words, how many mistakes do you get to make? 0, right. So like he said, I got 73,000 hours of mistakes from walking around stepping on landmines and going through the hardships of life, but I got 1,000 hours of how to do it right. And through process of elimination, like Sherlock Holmes says, when you remove all the things that cannot be, regardless how ridiculous the end result is, that is the fact. And so the math syntax now creates the facts on a mathematical level where when you write a sentence frontwards, it says the same thing when you write it backwards. And we're going to start off using the math interface to show you how this works and how we broke the code. This one here is. If you take your math problem, 2 plus 3 equals 5, and you want to check it, well, it's 5 minus 3 equals 2. If you want to multiply, 2 times 3 equals 6, and 6 divided by 3 equals 2. Now, this all came about, let's see. Well, I'll just use this. Spiral notebooks. Remember, some of you got some with the red line down the side here? Well, the way this code got broke was on April 6th in 1988. Now, for 3 years, I worked out math problems and nothing seemed to work. Now, one morning, I got up half asleep and I wrote 1 plus 2 equals 3, 3 minus 2 equals 1 on the red line. Went and got my coffee, some toast, came back and I said, but when I sat down, it was faced this way and I'm going, oh, that's a graft. So I grafted it. And when I grafted it, I broke the code. So deductive reasoning says that a fact, whether it's frontwards or backwards, is still a fact. Like in a math problem. If we have a 2 here and we've got a 2 here, nothing's changed. 5 here, 5 here, 6, 6. Those are whole objects. Therefore, they become the facts. We gave those the F's. Then the one thing that appears in front of a fact was an equal sign in a math problem. In a math problem, the equal sign has no value. It does not modify anything. So if it can't modify, and or are the conjunctions. So we gave that a C. Then you've got, when you went to school and you studied math, you had the negative, the positive, the negative, the positive, when you did grafting. So any motion from one side to the other resulted in motion. Well, here you've got a plus 3 and a negative 3, so therefore you're going from one side to the other. Same thing in multiplying, dividing. Because the motion constituted the verb. So we factored out the operation, and we gave this a verb. Because the verb does not modify the condition of a fact. It's like this pen here. It's in motion, but it's still a fact. So the only verb that exists, you have two verbs. Is is singular, are is plural, and the verb is thinking. But thinking is the condition of state as a fact. Therefore, the thinking condition of state when in motion is the only word that both maintains two conditions, a verb and a fact at the same time. Because everything that happens in the world is a result of something thinking before it can actually happen. Running is not a verb. Jumping is not a verb. That's a condition of your thinking. Those are conditions of state as an end result, called order of operations. So the only thing that was left was plus and minus, multiply and divide. And those we assigned to the prepositions, because when you write the sentence, for the bridge is over the river, and for the river is under the bridge, the over and the under are opposite prepositions. Both pictures are identical. Now we can take, and I've been doing this for almost 15 years now. People come to me with Bible passages because everyone wants to know who God is, or wants to know what the Bible really says. 1/3 of all the words are missing from the Bible, and the Quran, and Buddhism, and Hinduism, and all the great religions in the world. 1/3 of all the words are missing. And so when you can take whatever is written and then go out and put the correct prepositional phrases in now time. Remove the negative because you can't perform negative. Remove the illusion and create a fact. Now, a lawyer would write this like that. The bridge is over the river. And you were all taught when you were in 5th grade in school, never start a sentence with a prepositional phrase and never end a sentence with a prepositional phrase. Well, if you don't end a sentence with a prepositional phrase, you've got a dangling participle verb as an answer, which means your sentence is incomplete. If you start the sentence without a prepositional phrase, your first two words, bridge is going to become a verb. In this case, it's an adjective. Because you've got, one is an adverb, modifies the adjective, bridge, which modifies the pronoun is, which now is, no, this one here is a 1, 2, 1, 2. No, this one here is 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Show me a verb bridge and a river bridge. I mean a river verb and a bridge verb. Now, when the government writes their instructions on most of their forms, they don't use adjectives. They only use adverb, verb, adverb, verb, adverb, verb throughout the entire sentence structure. Now, we did an exercise. My daughter was in high school. She was a senior. And they had to write an essay, 300 words on one sheet of paper. And I told my daughter, I says, would you like to win first place? And she says, well, yeah, it's a $100 savings bond. And 300 children entered the competition. I says, well, because we know the operations of syntax, we're going to write 2 letters. The first one is going to be an adverb verb, 150 adverbs, 150 verbs. No adjectives, no pronouns, just adverb verb. The second one, we're going to use prepositional phrases, and we're going to write the letter correct in syntax. And then we're going to assign a fictitious name. And when you hand in your paper, you will slip this syntax copy into the pile. So at the end of the week, the announcement was made that my daughter Katie had won first place in the competition. Anybody that had even put one adjective in had created a coloring effect rather than a modifying effect. So she got the $100 savings bond. The one that was written with the correct sentence structure, communication, syntax, the principal got on and said, we have a mental student that got escaped from a mental institution, is in the school, and used the name on the quantumized document to look for this person, if anybody knew. And only my daughter was the only one that knew what the name meant assigned to the papers. A few weeks later in school, my daughter says to the teacher, when are you going to teach the correct sentence structure, communication, syntax? Teacher stands up and says, you're suspended. Get out of my class. You get an F for the course. So she goes down to the dean and says, I just got kicked out of English class. You know who my dad is? He goes, yeah. Go back to English class and send the teacher down here. So the teacher comes down and gets an earful of the fact that I disqualified all the books in the school when I signed up my daughter to go to that school in the first place. And I paid her tuition in gold eagles, American gold eagles. So it kind of stood out when it comes to registration that somebody would pay in gold eagles. So she was reinstated in the class and she got an A for English. And the teacher never bothered her again because she knew how to syntax. When she was 12 years old, she took the 38-page insurance forms for Florida for public employees, and she syntaxed the 38 pages and sent it to the Congress of the state of Florida. And the insurance company got fired, and the people who wrote it got fired. And that insurance policy was never initiated. In January of 2008, I syntaxed the mortgage documents and AIG's insurance forms. And I sent it back to him syntaxed. That's what caused the Great Depression we've got today. Under mail fraud, Title 18, Section 1341, they couldn't issue new mortgages because they were fraudulently conveyed. They knew they'd have a storm of once this got out to the people, yelling fraud and mail fraud, and the insurance companies couldn't write policies because they didn't have to pay on it. And that's what's created the disruption in the whole world system. This technology, when it was created, disqualified every treaty, trust, and contract worldwide. On March 1st, 1997, we syntaxed the trust industry in the Internal Revenue Service through the post office. Went out and there was $40 trillion held in trust worldwide. The Postal Service has today seized $33 trillion of that $40 trillion that was held in trust, of the 25 million trusts that existed worldwide.
Seized.
And then the other thing that took place just in August of 2009 was that this happened over in Auckland. I did a seminar for 90 Maori chiefs. And I explained to them since 1800, the post office has never had the correct sentence structure, communication syntax for any treaty, trust, or contracts anywhere on planet Earth. Well, we had people in the audience that were undercover CIA. Word got back to the post office to this effect. And in September, the United States Postal Service ordered Bern, Switzerland to turn over 47,000 numbered accounts worth $4 trillion, which the United States Postal Service was able to capture and put in the hopper. So this technology has made the post office about $38 trillion profit. The United States government only collects $500 billion a year in taxes from the 186 million people that pay taxes in the United States. We have a population of 300 million.
Can you explain about the post office being a rebuilder, not the banks or the government?
Okay, the post office, who's on a $100 bill? American, Benjamin Franklin.
No.
Who's the first Postmaster General of the United States? 1775, Benjamin Franklin. What's the decimal point for 1? 1.00, 100. During the Civil War, Grant was Postmaster General of our country. Lincoln was killed, so therefore he got put on a $50 bill. What's the decimal point for a country divided in 1/2? 0.50, $50 bill, Grant. Lincoln, or George Washington, was a letter carrier. He went on the $1 bill because he was the first president of the international bankruptcy with England. because he became president as a letter carrier, he was put on the $1 bill. Lincoln, 70 years later, after the first international bankruptcy of 70 years ended in 1859, was the president. He went on the $5 bill because he was Postmaster General of Springfield, Illinois. He was also placed on the penny because he was the first of the second international bankruptcy. Add 70 years to that, and you get 1929. Now, in the United States, November 2nd is our presidential elections. So this was the end of our second international bankruptcy. Now, our first bankruptcy was established on September 17th, 1789. My birthday is September 17th, so it's easy to remember. Plus, when you have a trust expires at the end of 45 days if the trustee is no longer part of the trust. So you got a 45-day grace period. If you had 45 days to September 17th, you get November 2nd, which is our presidential election day. Now, in 1929, United States Congress, Senate, Legislature, and Supreme Court voted to end our second bankruptcy and become sovereign, go on the gold standard. So they told England, we're not going to renew. So England, under the 5-day rule, had to tell the American public that they were going to close all the banks and credit unions because they were operated under the Bankruptcy Act. Subtract 5 days from November 2nd, you got October 29th, 1929, which throws the entire planet Earth into the 10-year Great Depression because commerce now is disrupted. Add 70 years to that, and you get November 2nd, 1999. The United States of America did not elect a president on that day because they voted to end the bankruptcy, and MasterCard controlled 98 cents on a dollar. And MasterCard was established back in 1964. So the private corporations of the convenience of MasterCard captured all the money, but we did it domestically. We can now end the bankruptcy. Now, as a result of the March 1st, 1997 code breaking of how to seize the trust, the United States government was able to harvest enough money from the trust industry, which was held in safety deposit boxes in numbered accounts worldwide, to pay off our international debt. And by November 2nd, 1999, we had $6 trillion surplus in the United States of America, which made us sovereign, and our third bankruptcy ended. We did not elect a president on November 2nd, 1999. The United States government said that 2/3 of all the states, 38 of the 50, had to recount all their ballots. Now, this was just an illusion to keep people watching the ballot counts while the 90 days runs. No law under the Treaty of Versailles, 1906, becomes legal in any federal government and anywhere on planet Earth for 90 days. Add 90 days to November 2nd, and you get February 2nd, 2000, at which time President Bush was appointed the next president of the United States of America corporation. The democracy of America is dead. It no longer exists. We are a corporation. New Zealand is a corporation. You guys are still in bankruptcy here. You're one of the few countries that are still in bankruptcy. Now, last time I was out here in Australia, we did a little check. Does anyone in this room know when your first money was issued in Australia? 1812. So if you take 1812, I think we know.
Is that a good thing? Bankruptcy?
Well, the post office, everybody here has Queen Elizabeth and Queen Victoria on your money, correct? Throughout your history. And your different denominations on your money are the Postmaster Generals of Australia. Your coins have Queen Elizabeth on them, and she is the Postmaster General of Australia through your international banking treaty, which you're in bankruptcy with the International Monetary Fund through London. Now, London, you're looking at England, you are not under English rule. You are controlled by the post office. And the post office was the ones that set up camp out here in 1918. So if you do the math, and you got 1812 and 70, you got 1882 and 70, 1952 and 70. $2022. That's when your bankruptcy ends.
Is there any paperwork we can find these dates?
Oh, international bankruptcy has been around for 6,500 years. That's 70 years as an international bankruptcy. It was established by the pharaohs in 4700 BC by the Masons.
I mean, can we find the information about the bankruptcy for Australia?
International bankruptcy, yeah.
Where?
At the library. Pull up your postal codes. You got to research your post office, your history of money. Talk to coin dealers, people that are professional coin dealers that trade in the currencies, the history of your country.
So there are documents in existence.
Oh yeah, that's how I found it.
So what's going to happen in 2022?
You guys are going to come out of bankruptcy and you're going to become sovereign. However, you guys can end your bankruptcy. Now, I don't know if you were aware of this, but on September 2009, your dollar was 73 cents to the U.S. currency. I just paid $1.03 for an Australian dollar at the airport. You guys are worth more than U.S. currency right now.
Wow.
So,
Nearly 91 cents at the moment.
no, it's $1.03.
Well, the commission would be the rest of trade,
Yeah,
back to America and get minus.
yeah. Well, they're taking a commission out of it. But the exchange rates, you guys are dead even with the U.S. right now. Our money's going down, your money's going up. Look at how many mines you guys got. Your gold, your silver, your molybdenum, your lithium. You guys control 20% of the world's lithium out in the mines out west.
Isn't lithium used to benumb the brain?
Lithium's for making batteries, lithium diodes. And it's also used, rare earth material is used for the glass on computer screens.
I thought it was also used as a deep press people.
So would we?
Well, I'm sure there's alternate.
There's a drug. So it is.
No, that's a mineral that they took to us.
I'm talking about a mineral. Use it for making lithium diode batteries for your cell phones, computers, and now 600 million electric cars is what they got targeted. 30 million a year.
Can I ask you to go back and explain what you mean by captured, that they captured all this money from the trusts? What do you mean by captured? Physically they took the money out in gold bars, or they just changed a few numbers on the screen?
No. On March 1st, 1997, I syntaxed the Boston Trust. There were 2 million copies of it. Then I did the Panama Trust. There were 2 million copies of that. When you use the mathematical syntax, the definition of the words are wrong. If the trust has the words are incorrectly used, then that means that the definition doesn't say what the trust was engineered for in the first place. It means that everyone was illiterate that created the trust, bought the trust, and used the trust. The Internal Revenue Service, going all the way back to when it was created, also couldn't read and write, because there wasn't a math interface to prove what the value of every word is. Now, because of this program, you have 68 prepositions and 38 articles. That's 1,800 divided by 2 means every word in the English language has 900 definitions. Yeah. Pen. Pen by itself is a pronoun. If I say the pen, the is an adverb, which modifies the verb pen. Modification is change, change is motion, motion is action, action is verb. Okay, now if I say of pen, of is normally the preposition and the is the article. Separated, they both become adverbs. So now you have an adverb of pen, or by pen, or with pen, or over pen, under pen, doesn't matter how you do it. If you separate all the prepositions and all the articles, this is going to become a verb. Now if you use a prepositional phrase, for this pen, for my pen, for your pen, for his pen, for her pen, with her pen, with his pen. See, every time I change the preposition or change the article, I change the ownership and I change the operation of the pen. If I change the operation of pen, and I can do it 900 times, if I put two nouns together, now I've got 81,000 variables. If I put three words together in a sentence, now I've got 7.2 million variables. I put the fourth word in, I got 640 million variables. I put 5 words in a sentence, I got 5.4 billion variables. And it goes on and on. So the government comes back and says, we can't do that. We don't have a computer that can break the code because the amount of terabytes of information just to write a single document with 300 words, so you'd have 900 to the 300 power. I mean, that's there's no computer in the world that has enough terabyte capacity to do that. My brain does it as fast as I can speak. I can syntax and write and do the conversions. So the human mind is really unique in its ability to use deductive reasoning and logic to create the correct sentence structure, communication, syntax. And with this level of accuracy, the government said that's impossible. Well, I've got a website of 100 pages. I have my books that I wrote, 107 pages. I've got 2,200 lawsuits that are all syntaxed correctly. I says they're all over the theater. Every judge, attorney, barrister has to study this information and be proficient at it, so when we walk into the courtroom, they know exactly what we're talking about. And then they play the dummy up game. Well, what's the first rule of law? It's called knowledge. If you don't have knowledge, you can't play in the sandbox. You can't participate. So you got to have the knowledge to understand what is being said. When I went into your courts here in Masseuse's case, I started attacking. Now, Dr. Masseuse has had 200 trials over the last 13 years. The case is currently running up a bill of $80 million. And I went in there and in 10 minutes I syntaxed day number 1 lawsuit, 2 pages, 186 mistakes on it in syntax. Disqualifies day 1. What happens when you build a foundation on sand? It's going to collapse. Well, if you commit a fraud on day number 1, the other 199 hearings are also fraud because they were predicated on day number 1. And the judge stands up and says, I don't have a pay scale high enough to deal with this, he says, you're not a barrister. You can't represent him. I says, yes, I am. When I came through your customs and immigrations, you put a stamp on my passport. And I signed my name across your stamp. As postmaster, that makes me a postmaster, banker, and judge, and a immigrations and custom officer of your country. So therefore, my passport, my American passport, gives me permission to enter into the foreign vessels. All courthouses on planet Earth are the same jurisdiction. I don't care if I'm in Wisconsin or I'm in Sydney, Australia, all courthouses are foreign vessels in dry dock. They are controlled by the port authorities, which are controlled by the Department of Transportation, which is controlled by the post office. That's the chain of command. The post office is responsible for script, which is money, pays everyone, moves the commerce, and pushes the vessels around through the Department of Transportation and then docks them in the ports. Every one of us are vessels in dry dock.
This chain of command, if we were to walk into a court and mention this chain of command, the judges here would know?
Yes, they do. All the judges are required to view my videotapes, read my book, and study this program on my internet. And believe me, they have copies of over 2,200 of my lawsuits. Matter of fact, last week when I got seized over in Australia, they completely downloaded my computer and 5 of my chips. They got over 500 lawsuits off of that, and including 135 lawsuits here in New South Wales, all the amicus curiae, the quo warranto complaints, and all the people that were involved in each one of these that are suing the government for fraudulent conveyance of language to extort rights and privileges. So they're going to have a lot of work to do when they go through all the programs, but they're going to see that it's